A couple of years ago, before the birth of our first child, Adeline, we were pregnant at that time. Of course, at this point, we're going to be new parents, all excited about this. I was determined that our child be, the smartest of them all, sort of thing. And I wanted her to be brilliant and wanted to look up all the supplements and, training procedures to help that. So we bought this book. It was about children's brains and training and how to help them become. And we were driving and listening to this book, and he says, the most often asked question to him was, how do I get my child into Harvard? And he said, you really want to know how to get your child into Harvard? He said, go home and love your wife.
So it's actually what spawned our conversation card number 3 in our foundations deck. And the question is, what should be our reuniting routine when we see each other after coming home from work? And then at the bottom of each card, we have a little tip or studies show or examples. So this one says, studies show children thrive academically and emotionally when they sense security in their parents' marriage. In other words, prioritizing your spouse will not hurt your children. Kiss your spouse before the kids and in front of them. And it's funny because this card, it was in our beta deck, and one of the couples that beta tested our cards said, it says kiss your spouse before the kids, and it ended there. They said, does that mean initially, like before you kiss the kids, kiss your spouse, or does it mean before the kids as in front of them?
Both.
And we're like, both. So we added that, and in front of them.
Each stage of parenting brings on a brand new level of stress.
Yeah. I mean, right now we have, 1.5-year-old, and then we have an infant. And we have these 2 different types of parenting responsibilities and different tension that exists in our marriage because of the parenting approaches that we're taking. And so with each stage of parenting, it's so important to make sure that you're a united front. And so your relationship being united is important, but it's also important to be united in 3 other areas. So we want to cover those 3 today.
Those 3 areas are rules, responses, and routines. Those 3 areas, if you can be united in, the children will really be able to flourish in that environment.
And to sense, too, that you're a team. So the first one with rules, really the main rule, and it's the only commandment in all of Scripture that's given specifically to children, and that's, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And actually, our dad, Adam's dad, reminded us of this because we were talking about how Adeline's been testing us. And, we were kind of proud of ourselves that we had set this boundary and we explained the story.
We were being consistent.
Yeah. And he, but it included a threat of the consequence. And he reminded us that there's no threat. You simply give the instruction once. So bring that back to me, Adeline. Right. And if she doesn't, there's the consequence. It's not you. There's no counting. There's no, do you want a spanking? There's no, you don't have to threaten anything. It's just simply obey. And so if you can be on the same page about rules, and that one, it's the simplest of the 3, but it's not the easiest because you have to be consistent, and it's not always convenient to be consistent.
I remember a story my dad telling us of the importance of this, just obey, without having to ask why or delaying. We were on our way to the airport. We were dropping my dad off, and we remember getting out and walking toward the terminal, and my sister ran in front of us, just ran off the sidewalk and into the crosswalk without us. And my dad yelled at one point, just stop! And all of us stopped, and I remember my sister stopping, and this big UPS truck just flew by her. If your kids, don't listen, or that could be very dangerous.
After the first instruction.
Right.
Yeah. So that first one's important. Be a united front about the rules. And really, it's the one rule, which is just obey.
Right. And another tip here, too, is...
So the next one is responses. So we have rules, responses, and then routines. With regards to responses, this can be so subtle. Sometimes it could be I see Adam correcting my daughter, and if I make a face like why are you saying that to her type of face, and my daughter sees that can automatically make her question how much she can trust him. It can make her question, it can make her mistrust. And so you're automatically creating a divide between the two of you, and your child will pick up on that, and your child will then capitalize on that to get their way, because they know they can kind of spread you apart even more. And
yeah, kids are brilliant.
Yes.
And if there is a weakness between us, they'll exploit it. It's interesting. Generally, there's a disciplinarian and then the more go with the flow sort of person, right? And I think I've seen this over and over, where at the beginning you decide, okay, we're going to do these things, and you kind of work together. But if you don't maintain those positions and where you stand on everything, the two ways of thinking kind of start dividing, and people look at each other like, I need to balance her because she's so strict, and she needs to balance me because I'm so go with the flow, and she becomes more and more strict, and I become more and more go with the flow to help balance her, and so we have this kind of like against each other sort of thing, and if you don't watch it, the kids will pick up on this, and it undercuts your wife's authority with the kids, and it undercuts my authority with the kids if we're not on the same page.
Absolutely. And this one goes especially for parents of teenagers. If you question your spouse at all in any subtle way, like even a teenager says, yeah, mom said da 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 da, and then the dad goes, really?
Why would you do that?
That is undercutting. So your response, you need to be united in your responses.
And remember, when we say responses, it's not just verbal, but it's also the nonverbal.
Exactly.
So much is communicated nonverbally. I don't have to say anything, but I could show my contempt by rolling my eyes.
So finally, the third one is routines. So be united in your routines. You know this, children thrive off of consistency, and it's okay to switch up the routine given the context. So an example we give is, you might have a certain bedtime during the week, and then the bedtime is later on the weekends. That's totally fine. But make sure your kids know what to expect. There's also seasons of life that you might go through where the routine needs to be flexible, like maybe there's a sick family member, or someone's in the hospital. Right now it's drama time at our church. It's a big Easter production, and so the routines are going to be different around the drama. That's okay. So make sure that you are communicating to the children what they should expect in terms of the routine. And one routine that we mentioned at the beginning of the video is the coming home routine. Talk to your spouse. What should be our reuniting routine when we come home from work? No matter who comes home first, or if one of you is stay at home and the other comes home from work. And we emphasize and insist on your reuniting routine needs to be the two of you first, and then the children. So even if the kids are running up and hugging you, you can acknowledge them, but say, I'm going to find mommy to hug her. I'm going to go give daddy a big kiss, and then pay attention to the children.
Why is that important?
They sense the security in their parents' marriage.
A common dynamic in counseling that we've seen is, say the husband comes home and the wife, who's been with the kids all day, she's excited to see the husband, but instead of them reuniting, like Carissa was just talking about, instead of that happening, he just throws himself into being fun daddy and enjoying the time together. And the wife, after a long time of this, she starts becoming resentful and feeling like, I only get the leftovers. Now he's completely exhausted. There's nothing, and we don't even get to talk.
Yeah.
Or I don't even get my kiss or a hug, and she's exhausted too. So if we can prioritize each other and make sure each other's needs are met, it's that much more just beneficial for the kids to see like the security and safety of the marriage. We could feel confident in that. And so do that from the outset.
Yes.
Pay attention to your wife, your husband, and seek them out.
So go home and have this conversation about what should be our reuniting routine when we see each other after coming home from work.